Good morning, YouTube. I know this isn't my normal content, but I am currently rebuilding or making a new gaming slash multimedia computer. I don't generally do much, if any, gaming. Generally, what I use my computer for is for my 3D modeling, YouTube editing, and other general use. I think the last time I played a computer game was probably like 6 years ago. So the reason I'm featuring this on this channel is because I'm going to use this computer to get into higher end editing. I want to start using Blender and a couple other design softwares so that I can do more natural or organic designs. So this is going to be my computer build. Most of it I'm going to do as a time lapse. I'm not sure how many of you will actually be super interested in the build itself. I did have some 3D printed parts that I'll show off later, holding the desk together, which I showed last week. And I also have a decent bit underneath that I'm going to have for wire management. I have the power breakout strip, surge protector strip mounted with some 3D printed clips underneath. And then in a moment I will go through all the parts that I've decided to use and explain also the parts that aren't here yet. I'm still waiting for my monitors and then a PCIe breakout for my second M.2 because happy accident I ended up with a second one. Alright everybody, welcome back. So first off we have the home for all the parts. It's a Musatex Black Phantom RGB case. It does have tempered glass side and front panels. It came with, and the reason I chose this case over a certain other one I was looking at is because this one included 6 RGB fans. They're currently oriented in 3 in and 3 exhaust. I'll probably leave it that way. But the other case was, I think it was like $40 less, but it came with no fans, and to get a halfway decent fan, you can pay upwards of $30 a piece. So I decided to give this one a try. Here's some front connector wires. It does have a removable magnetic dust filter on the top, which I think is pretty nice. Just lines it there. It does have support for radiators on the top, should you decide to do that later. In the future, I was considering an AIO, but for now I'm going to stick to just a straight air. And this is a mid-ATX case. So I think that's really about it on the case. Next, I decided to go with a pairing of the MSI Gaming Plus Max B450 Max board and the Ryzen 5 Gen 3 3600. There are obviously higher end CPUs out there and higher end CPUs that would have worked with this board, but for my purpose the 3600 is the best bang for the buck probably CPU there is. Intel has some good options, but they're a little less cost efficient, and I've always been brand loyal to AMD. I've never had much luck with Intel myself. Not to say other people don't, just my preference. So that's why I went with that. It should be more than capable of doing my rendering and slicing softwares. Up next, I have not one, but 2 M.2 256 gig SSDs. These are 2080 SSDs with a PCI Gen 3x4. I ordered one and Amazon lost it, so they sent me the second one, and then a couple days later the first one showed up again. So by happy accident I ended up with 2. So I am waiting for the PCIe breakout board so I could plug the second one in. I didn't want to at first just for aesthetics, but I ended up finding one that basically is just a very small rail that this plugs into with a heatsink, so I don't think it'll take much, if any, away from the aesthetics. Honestly, you probably won't even see it under the graphics card once it gets here. But that'll be something that's added after this video, because it's not going to be here until, I think, Monday. And also my monitors. I'm running dual 29-inch ultra-wide monitors. They're curved gaming monitors. I'm running on video port direct to the GPU. I also have, from my own computer build, a 32-inch, it's underneath the desk, a 32-inch just flat TV. I'm going to probably mount vertically over here. or I might mount it above the monitors. I haven't 100% decided yet. And that one's just going to run on HDMI because that's what it's compatible with. For my other storage, I got a Seagate 7200 2 terabyte. Again, best bang for the buck. I think it's $54.99 for 2 terabytes of storage. So I'm going to have 2 terabytes of hard disk, and then half a terabyte of M.2. And then I also have a SSD that I believe is 240 that I might or might not throw in there. This probably isn't going to be more than adequate. My old computer has a 120 SSD and a half terabyte hard drive, and I've never filled either up. So honestly, this is probably plenty for what I do. To go with the CPU, I ended up, it does include its own CPU fan, but I figured if I'm going RGB, I'm going to go RGB. So I got this Thermaltake high airflow CPU cooler. It supports AMU and 1150 LGA for Intel. Doesn't offer any increased cooling over the stock cooler. It's just for aesthetics. I like the way it looks. Honestly, I like the way the stock cooler looks, but this one has lights, so it wins. I ended up with the 750 watt Thermaltake, also RGB, low ripple noise, fully modular, and they're also flat black cables. Those either won't be used or they might be just not visible because I did order a nice set of extensions that are black, blue, and gray. I think they'll look very nice in this build. I am probably going to be running the blue lights, and then I have a little bit of gray splashed here and there in other places. So I think that these will look very nice in my build. So those are going to be what are visible. And I also might end up 3D printing some more cable cones later. But we'll see how it works with what came with it. The reason I went with the 750 isn't necessarily because I needed it, but it happened to be on sale on Newegg. So I decided to go with this one. It is 80 plus gold. Really, I was just looking for 650 watt, 80 plus gold. But when I found the 750 watt for essentially the same price, you know, it's always better to have more, and then they'll run more efficiently and run quieter if you don't use all the power. But it's available, and it'll also be available, say, in the future if I get a higher end CPU or higher end GPU. It's a little bit of future proofing. And now on to the thing I had the most trouble deciding on. I ended up going with the Radeon RX 5500 XT, 7 nanometer. It's got FreeSync HDR. It also has some RGB only on their logo. It runs on 8 gigs of GDDR6, and it's supported on PCI 4. And the main reason I picked this one over the 1660, which is the other one I was thinking about, was because this one has clock speeds up to 1845 if you go with the boost clock, and then the base clock is 1685 megahertz. And the main deciding factor is because this one has 8 gigs of DDR6 versus the other one only had 6 gigabytes of GDDR6. And from what I've seen, this is a very good card. So is the other one. And they go back and forth which one does better. The other one tends to run slightly higher FPS in games, but I think this one will do just fine for what I use it for. This is the OC edition. And the only thing I would change about this, and I actually might end up hitting it with some rattle can, is that I have no other red anywhere in my build, except for on the seat sink, which this will be facing down, but also on the back plate there's some red. It's a tasteful amount, so I may just leave it. It's just, I literally have no red anywhere else in my system, so I'm not sure if I'm going to leave that or not. I might take the back plate off and paint it. But for now, I'm going to leave it how it is for the purposes of this video. So yeah, so that's all the parts. I do have, again, RGB, something I didn't really need, but I thought it was pretty cool. This is a whole desk keyboard mouse mat. So it's rather large, plenty big enough for the area. The rim has like a fiber optic plastic cording, I guess. And right here is the light controller, so you just plug it in the back through your USB, and you can control the lights. They could be solid lights, they can flash, they can just chase around. And I just thought it looked really cool, so we decided to go ahead and get that one. And considering the price, I think it was very reasonable. I believe it was like $23. And then I have my dual monitor mounts. I could put a link up. I found these on Amazon. I haven't put any weight on them with the monitors, but they look fine. They're rated up to a 32-inch monitor, so I'm hoping that that should line up with the 29 ultra wide, but we'll see how that works. And then also, the only place I like really cheaped out was with these speakers. They plug in USB and then the 3.5 mil plug, and then they do light up. You cannot control the lights, and quite frankly, the sound is just acceptable. But for what I do, it should be more than adequate. Generally, the only time I need speakers is if I'm looking at a YouTube video, which doesn't have to have the most amazing sound in the world. But they're pretty low form factor, and they were, I think, $17, so that's why I went with those. So yeah, so that's all the parts, and we're going to go ahead and get started building. Alright guys, just one thing real quick. It's good practice to either have a static grounding wristlet. A lot of times it's actually a really good idea to put it on your ankle. That way it doesn't get in your way while you're trying to build. But if you don't want to do that, you still want to have a way to get yourself to ground anytime you get up and you're moving, so you don't short out your parts with a little bit of static electricity. So one good option is just to have your power supply, and you plug it into the wall, and then anytime you think you're going to move or you have any type of static build, you can just touch it, and that sends you to ground through your outlet. That way you can discharge any potential static electricity. Just a good idea that I picked up while watching some other videos like BitTech, Linus Tech Tips, and so on. There's countless other awesome YouTubers that do almost entirely computer building. So I can link a few of those down in the description. They were definitely very helpful to me, and I drew a lot of inspiration from them. And even though I have built my own computer before, that was about 10 years ago. I guess I did well because it still runs. But a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years, so I've been watching a lot of their videos, and I found them all to be very helpful. So maybe you will too if you want to go down the building path yourself and catch the bug. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to share that little bit with you, and let's go ahead. I actually almost forgot a very important part. I also got the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro at 3600 megahertz. For the Ryzen processors, you want to go at least 3000. 3200 to 3600 is ideal. And I ended up going with a 2x16 36 gig kit. They're definitely not low profile, but they're some of the most aesthetically pleasing out there. There's some other options. Trident Z is really nice as well. And you can go like the Royal, but those are a little too blingy for my taste. So I think that these will fit quite nicely in my build. Also, just some accessories. I got some Velcro wire management to help keep the back nice and clean. And then in this little box is a heat sink for the M.2 that's going to be on the board itself. And then, like I said, the PCIe M.2 came with its own heatsink built in. So this one actually goes on the board below. You got a thermal pad, M.2, another thermal pad, and then the top of the heatsink, and then little screws go on the side. So that should help cover up the bare PCB of the M.2, as well as help to keep it nice and cool. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the build like we were already supposed to. got the M.2 installed. Luckily, it did come with a third thermal pad because there were some little diodes on the board that the heat sink would have possibly been touching. So that last thermal pad went in between, so that's helpful. The CPU is installed. And then the RAM, I'm running dual channel. And then to get the best performance, when you're only running 2 cards, you want to do the 2 on this board, the 2 red ones. So I guess I actually do have a little bit of red on this. So the graphic card should fit fine. The furthest set alternate from each other from the CPU port is going to be your dual channel set, your DIMM. So that's where you want to put those. If you have 4 cards, it doesn't matter. But if you're only running 2, you want to do the second and the 4th slot from the CPU. So also, I showed real quick, in size, the stock CPU cooler and this Thermaltake one are very similar. The only thing I noticed is that the actual interface from the cooler to the CPU is a little smaller with this one. So hopefully it will still see good thermals. If not, I may end up putting the stock fan back on just until I end up upgrading to like the AIO or something. But you can see like the thermal contact area is actually significantly larger. It takes up the entire chip on the stock AMD cooler versus probably 2/3 of the chip on this one. This isn't an overly hot CPU to start with. I'd be much more concerned, for instance, if it was like 9th gen Intel or something like that, because they tend to run significantly hotter, or even like an AMD Threadripper, something more powerful, more power hungry. I would definitely be concerned about that. I'm pretty sure this will be fine. And then again, like I said, I'll just keep an eye on the numbers, make sure the thermals are good, and then if I have to, I'll switch this later. But I've heard mostly good reviews about it, aside from the fact that it just doesn't offer any better cooling over stock, but it should be able to keep up from what I've heard. So this is the one we're going to use still, and we're going to go ahead and get back to building. Just something to keep an eye out for. I did just get the part cooler on. It's very, very difficult to get that second latch attached to the mounts. That is one advantage I would say probably over this with the stock cooler, is you actually would take these brackets off and screw it directly to the board, so the screws would just go straight down right in to the back plate, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. I had to put an awful lot of tension and do something I didn't want to do and use a screwdriver to actually pry the little clip forward, because that clip, that bar is got, it's almost like a leaf spring on your car. It's got quite a bit of tension on it. So in order to get it down and out at the same time, it seems like you need a couple too many hands to get in there. So just something to look out for the future. I did get it mounted. Don't think I heard anything. So just be careful when you're doing it yourself, because it feels like you're going to break it. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get back into the build. Alright, real quick. I just discovered that I should have done a little more research before buying this cooler. With these 2 pins, you need a 5-volt RGB header, and this motherboard only has 2 12-volt ARGBs, or they're calling JRGB. So there's no way, without an additional approximately $20 controller, to make these RGB lights work with this board. So that's something I'm gonna take a look at later on. Maybe get an AIO like I was thinking about anyway. So for right now, unfortunately, I'm gonna take this one off and put the stock cooler back on. And then we'll go ahead and get back into the build from there. Alright, now onto the case. We are going to first remove the tempered glass side panels. Careful not to lose these little thumb screws. And once the build's all done, I'm going to be removing these corners. Do not like how they look very much. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and take the side panel off the case. Be sure not to drop these thumb screws. Alright, and then carefully pull the panel straight off. You're going to want to set this somewhere where it won't fall. It is tempered glass, but it'll still break if it falls. Alright. So we're going to want to go ahead and check and make sure that the standoffs for the motherboard are correct. It's going to be in this orientation. And it does appear as though the standoffs are all in the correct spots. Just want to verify there's no extra ones touching anywhere that there aren't holes in the board. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these all are in the correct orientation. So now that we know that the standoff's correct, we need to install the I/O shield that came with the motherboard. You just take this from the inside, make sure it's the right direction, audio ports down, and line it up. And you just give it a relatively firm push until you hear it click all the way around, and you can see that it's seated all the way. So, just like so. Seems to be in nicely. Now I'm actually going to lay the case down so I can screw in the motherboard. Some people do prefer to do this standing up, but I just find it's less likely that it's going to slip while you're trying to get the screws lined up. So I prefer to lay down the case for this part. You want to angle it into the I/O shield first. Make sure it's lined up and then come straight down. That way your standoffs aren't scraping anywhere on the board. There's going to be a little bit of tension there. Just keep that in mind. And then you got to find a little bag of screws so you can get the motherboard screws. Alright, and there are the flat ones with the hexagonal heads. Gonna want to go ahead and grab the screwdriver. It's got a magnetic tip, so you can focus on lining up the board. I'm just going to start in this back corner. And preferably not do that. Alright, so we got one in. We're gonna want to make sure we go ahead and get all 9 put in. Make sure that there's my problem. The I/O is not always seated. That's why I was having some tension over here. There we go. Now it's all where it goes. And the screws line up much easier. Perfect. Alright, I just realized this case, these are not the correct screws. You want to use the round panhead screws. They have a different thread so they fit in correctly. Just in the past, anytime I've had motherboard screws, they were the hexagonal ones, so I just assumed that was the case here, but assuming just makes an ass out of you and me. You don't have to crank these down super tight. Just want to make sure that the motherboard will not move. Alright, now the motherboard is securely attached to the case. We can go ahead and put in the power supply, graphics card, and start managing the wires, as well as the external hard drive. Or sorry, the internal hard drive. Alright, I just slid the power supply in, and this is where we're going to use the hexagonal head screws. Right. It is good practice to have all the wires that you're going to be using on your power supply attached before you screw it down, but it's easy enough for me to access right here that I'm just going to put the power supply in first and then see exactly which wires I need. I would like to see if just my extensions will reach, but I don't think they're going to. So I am going to have to put in the wires with the extensions, I think. But there's plenty of room underneath here to be able to hide that excess wiring, so it doesn't look, terrible. Where's the last screw? There we go. Alright. Now the power supply is connected. I just slid the power supply in, and this is where we're going to use the hexagonal head screws. Right. It is good practice to have all the wires that you're going to be using on your power supply attached before you screw it down, but it's easy enough for me to access right here that I'm just going to put the power supply in first and then see exactly which wires I need. I would like to see if just my extensions will reach, but I don't think they're going to. So I am going to have to put in the wires with the extensions, I think. But there's plenty of room underneath here to be able to hide that excess wiring, so it doesn't look, terrible. Where's the last screw? There we go. Alright. Now the power supply is connected. Now I'm going to work on putting in the graphics card. So this is a PEI port cover. You have to loosen that so you can get to these two. It's going to be the second and third covers you have to remove. So you just take the screws out. might actually be easier to take this all the way off, get the screws from the outside. And I think I also need a bigger screwdriver, so just give me 1 second to get that. All right, back with my screwdriver. So I just take these screws, just take them all the way out. We'll put them back in once the graphics card is in, just to get them out of the way. And this should just come right out. I'm used to these being metal. I'm a little surprised that they're plastic, but since they're coming out, it doesn't really matter. I just kind of wish the ones that were still in were actually metal. Take that out. Hold on to those 2 screws. So again, we're going to be using them in a second. Now you want to open up, so it goes, that's locked, and open. I'm going to have that opened up. Since it's going to be face side down like this, we're going to go ahead and peel this right now. Beautiful. So now, first just double check, make sure this fan's nice, which they do. So then this is going to go ahead, slide back here, and you're just going to make sure it's, oh, hold on, there's actually a PCI cover, I didn't realize that. So you want to line it up, like so, and then just give it a gentle push until that locks in. Now the card is in. Honestly, it's probably not necessary to put these 2 screws back, but I want to make sure it's as secure as possible, since it is a decent amount of weight hanging off of the motherboard. A lot of times they have the tendency to sag a little bit over here. This one isn't super long, so I'm not really that worried about it, but if you have like a 2080 or 2080 Ti, those ones get kind of heavy and long, so then you might have to add in GPU support, which could be a little stand under here. Some people simple as run a string from there up to the top of their case just to keep it, but this one doesn't have a whole lot of sag. And then right here, the Phantom Gaming's logo, that is RGB. The rest of it's just standard colors, but that part is addressable RGB, so we'll get to have some fun with that later. Alright, it looks like now the next step is going to be running the wires. Actually put the cover back on, and then we're going to be running the wires for the power supply, and that part of this build I'm going to be doing as a time lapse. Helps you put that in all the way. Put it in right. There we go. So it goes from the inside. So like I said, I'm going to be doing the rest of the video as a time lapse, up until I get to the point to where I'm going to be checking to see if it posts. I've done this before. You might not be able to tell because it's a while ago, but if you're unsure, specifically if it's hardware that you don't know, it's a good idea to actually assemble everything sitting on top of your motherboard box, and then you can actually check to make sure everything works and it posts before you get it in the case. But I prefer to do things the hard way, so we're not going to do that. But in your build, if you wanted to give that a try, that's recommended by a lot of people who build computers, so you can always think about that. Alright, so now like I said, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the power supply wires and wire management. Alright, real quick, one more thing I almost forgot. The regular 2 terabyte hard drive, it goes in this slot right here in the back. See, it's right in here. I did have to take the power supply back out just so I can get the screwdriver, and unfortunately the case only included 3 screws, and the hard drive itself didn't come with any, so I have 2 on this side, and then you actually have to take the front panel off and reach through the fan to get to the 3rd one in the middle. So for a solid state drive, or sorry, for a 3.5 inch drive, you know, it's tight, it's not going anywhere, so I'm not really that worried about only having 3 screws. Just wanted to make sure that I added that part on there, and make sure that I didn't forget it. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get started on the power supply wires and wire management. Alright, now we have the power supply back in. All the power supply wires are attached, and I just started working on the management. I have to connect the front controls to the motherboard still, And then after that, we're going to test it, and then we'll tidy up the wires the rest of the way. Alright, now time for the moment of truth. Everything is hooked up. Again, I have not managed the wires yet, but I got the USB, I got the front audio, I got the USB 3.0, and the front power reset and LEDs all hooked up. All the components are plugged in, as well as the light controller and fan controller. It's all plugged in, so we should be able to go ahead and flip the power switch on the power supply, if I can find it. And if we hit the power button, hopefully we'll get lights. There we go. That is what some people like to call quite a bit of unicorn barf. That's pretty cool though. Alright, I guess that means we can move on to the wire management. I can't tell yet if it's posted all the way or not because I don't have the monitor. I will see if it will work with this TV, but in the past I've had trouble getting it to accept signal until the computer is actually signed in. So I'm not sure if it'll actually function that way or not. Also, real quick, just take a look. You can see the logo on the graphics card is also pulsating with everything else. Looks really cool. Alright, we got all the wire management done. Everything's plugged in. Again, waiting for the monitors. Until then, I can't really tell. But the only error code I got on the motherboard was boot because there is no boot drive technically installed. So now we're going to go ahead, put the panels back on. I'll come back later once it's all done and I'll clean them up a little bit, get the last of the fingerprints off. But that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. And then we'll see how it looks with the panels on. And the glass, it's pretty easy. It just sits right under these little legs that are big enough to slide into the cutouts into the glass. And then you just put the screws right in there. They have little rubber gaskets, so no point is it pinching the glass. Alright, and the last screw. We got the front panel on. Now for the side panel. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to take these corners off. I think those are mostly to protect it during shipping, because the corners and the edges are the weakest parts of tempered glass. Slide it up on the pegs. Don't know if you guys can hear, my son's not very happy right now. He is in the living room with his mom, and it sounds like he is not getting his way. And for the last screw, then we'll do a good old peel. Alright, now for the best part of any computer build. Beautiful. And later on, I will remove that sticker with a razor blade. So we're going to go ahead, plug it back in. hit the power button. Power button. Helps if you have a power supply on. So you can see everything is glowing. And then I can change the lights on the case with the remote. The lights on the memory and the graphics card, as well as on the board where it says Gaming Plus in red. Those should all be controllable with the software. And also, you can't really see it, but the power supply is also lit up right now. There's buttons to control the lights on here. Let's see. Yeah, so I could just, with the button on the top, I could just filter through some of the settings. I can also change the fan speed on here. So like if I turn down the speed enough, you'll see them get slower, slower, slower. And eventually they'll actually come to a complete stop. And then, you know, just speed it up and the fans come back on. So now it looks like my build is done up until the monitors arrive. Alright, we got the temporary setup. We got the computer, mouse, keyboard, desk mat, and we're looking to see if it'll boot to this monitor or not. I'm not sure if it will, because it's a TV, and it usually doesn't boot until it gets an actual video input. So I might have to wait until Monday, today's Saturday, to get my actual monitors before I can see if it boots all the way, before I can install the operating system. Yeah, this is all I get on the TV, just like I thought. It's just searching for a signal, but there's no actual video signal yet, so I can't tell if it's booted or not, or if it's posting. But everything else looks great. It says down there, Gaming Plus, and then other than that, everything else looks great. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Probably next week I will have a final video of my setup once the monitors are here and I have the operating system and all my 3D printing software is all installed. But yeah, if you want to see more content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you'll get notified whenever I post a new video. And I really hope you enjoy as much as I do. Definitely can't wait for the monitors. Like I mentioned, I'm doing dual 29-inch ultra-wide curved monitors, and then I'm going to have this TV as a third viewing source. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Alright, I hope y'all really enjoyed the build. Look forward to seeing you next week. Let me know what you thought. Alright, have a good one.